Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Prakasakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Prakasaka Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu ki Gita Romanchakam Pasu Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanma Diramajanado Shri Vigrahara Nana Yuktasya Bhaktamsa Niyonjatati Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satpanna Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidha Bhagavat Prasada Satpanna Pitaiva Tripte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Shiradhikama Bhavayara Para Madhura Leela Gunarupa Namna Shiradhikama Madhura Leela Gunarupa Namna Pratikshana Dhanandalokasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindam Nekunjayuno Ratikeli Siddhai Jajali Bhiri Jukti Apekshaniya Nikundayono Tatrati daksha Atibalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Sakchar Dharitena Shamasta Shastri Uktas Tatha Bhavyataiva Sarve Sakchar Dharitena Shamasta Shastri Kintu Prabharja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Kintu Prabharja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Guru Shri Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi Yasya prasadam Yasya prasadam Dhyayam stubham tasya Yasatmin sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Dhyayam stubham Yasatmin sandhyam Dhyayam stubham tasya Yasatmin sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Pachatari Shatarine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Nivishesha Shunyavadi Patatare Shata Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavrinda Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Yadaye Namah Krishna, Yadavaye Namah, Hare Yadaye Yadavaye Madhavaya Kesavaye Namaha. Gopal Govindaram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopina Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hare Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Jaya Baladeva, Baladeva, Rohini Nandana, Baladeva, Jaya Baladeva, Rohini Nandana, Jaya Sankarshana, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Sankarshana, Jaya Baladeva. Rohini Nandana, Jaya Baladev, Rohini Nandana, Prabhu Baladev, Jaya Bhakta Vatsala, Prabhu Baladev, Jaya Prabhu Vatsala, Prabhu Baladev, Jaya Bhakta Vatsala. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Shri Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe. Jaya Jagannath, Jayo Baladeva, Jayo Subhadrama, Jayo Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, Jayo Sitaram, Sitaram, Jayo Lakshman Hanuman. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Haribo. Jai Vishpar Paramansa Prabhajagacharya Sutara Saraswati Maharaj. ISKCON Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapakachar Vaishnav Ceremony. Gaura Priya Jana Krishna Prema Bhakti Data Patita Pavana. His divine grace Abhacharvinda Bhakti Viranta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ji Ki Jai. Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patitu Udhar Ki Jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sat Goswami Prabhu's Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai. Jayananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai. Prem Se Koho Se Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shaddaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. Jai Shri Balaram Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai. Param Dayal Se Nityananda Balaram Ki Jai. Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandana Shriman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mahavrana Avatar Krishna Prema Bhakti Datta Patita Pavana Shri Shri Gauranitai Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Golokera Pramadhan Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai. Juga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai. Brihatantanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopukupna Radha Kund Syamakund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrajabhum Vrindavan Mathurdam Ki Jai. Deloship Shri Radha Nilamadhava Ki Jai. Shri Mayapunapadup Ekachakradam Ki Jai. Parama Karuna Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai. Shri Purushottam Ketra Jagannath Dham Ki Jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smasvadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai. Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Karan Shingare Bhagavan Ki Jai. Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Bolo Shri Mathuradharani Ki Jai. Shamaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai. Nitai Gaurari Pramanande. All glories to the somebody bodies. All glories to the somebody bodies. All glories to the somebody bodies. All glories, glories to Shri Guru Shri.
Namaste Narasimhaya Praladalaadaine
Praladalaadaine
Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha
Kashipu Vaksha
Shilatankanakalaye
Shilatankanakalaye
Ito Narsimho Parato Narsimho
Ita Nisingha Parata Nisingha
Yato Yato Yamitato Narsimho
Jato Jato Jamitato Nisingha
Bahir Narsimho Hrudaye Narsimho
Bahir Nisingha Hrudaye Nisingha
Narasimha Nadim Sharanam Prapade
Narasingha Nadim Sharanam Prapade
Tavakara Kamalavare Nakam Adbhuta Shringa Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Bringam केशवदीता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
Baba Kara Kamala Bari Naka Adbhuta Sringam Dalita Hiranyakasipo Tanavingam Kesavadita Narari Rupa Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha
O Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa
Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha Jai Jagadisha
O Jaya Narasimhadev 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 Jaya Narasimhadev
Jaya Nisingare 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 Jaya Nisingare
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj
Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad
Jaya Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Prabhupada 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 Jaya Prabhupada
वैष्णोदेव भगवान की भक्तराज प्रहलाद महाराज की
जय। Ladies, want to sing? Tulsi? Want to sing, Tulsi?
Namo Namaha Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namaha
Tulasi
Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo राधा कृष्ण सेवा पावो हे अभिलाषी
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 हे तुम्हार शरण लोय तारा वांछ पूर्णा होय
जे तुम्हारा शरण तारा वांछ पूर्णा
कृपा कोरी करो तारे वृंदावन बासी
तुम्हें कृपा करे करा करे वृंदावन वासी
मोराया विलास विलास कुंजे दियो वास
विलास कुंज दियोवा
नयने हरिभो सदा जुगल रूप रासी
अमिनायाने रिवसादा जुगल रूपरासी
निवेदन धर सखीरनुगाता करो
निवेदनाधर सखीरनुगाता करो
हे निवेदन धर सखीरनुगाता करो
हे निवेदनाधर सखीरनुगाता करो
सेवाधिकार दिए करो निज दासी
सेवायारी करो दिए करो निज दासी
दीन कृष्ण दासे को ये नमो रहो
दीन कृष्ण दास को हे ये नमो रहो
श्री राधा गोविंद प्रेम सदा ये नभासी
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 यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मात्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
तानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मात्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
तानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मात्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
तानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्मात्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणश्यन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे
हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi, Jaya Vrinde Devi.
Jaya Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Gaura Hari Bol.
Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Shri Vrindai Tulasi Devi, Priyayai Kesava Satya, Vishnu Bhakti Pradevi, Satavatai Namo Namo. Vrindayai Tulasi Devi, Priyayai Kesava Satya, Vishnu Bhakti Pradevi, Satavatai Namo Namo. Vrindayai Tulasi Devi, Priyayai Kesava Satya, Krishna Bhakti Pradevi, Satavatai Namo Namo. Jeshmati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. O Tulasi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident over in Vrindavan. My desire is that you also grant me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus within my vision I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower carry damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maidservant. This very fallen and lowly servant Krishna praise. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govinda. Srimati Tulasi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Khastakam ki jai. Chito Darpana Marjanam Bhavamada Bhagni Vapanam Shri Akari Vachandrika Vitaranam Vidya Vadhu Pradiparam Punamada Swadanam Sarvatmasnam Paramparam Jayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita niyamita smarane nakala etadusitava kripa bhagavan mamati durdhaivam idishamya jani nanuraga trinadapi sunichena tararapi saishuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari adhanam najanam nasundarin kavitam vaja garisakamaye mama janmane janmanishwari bhavatar bhaktira itukitvaye oinandatanu jakinkaram paritama bisame bhavambudo kripaya stitaduli sadrisam vichintaya nayanam galorashrudharaya vadanam gadagadharudaya gira Ulakayani sitamba pukada tavanamagrane bhavisati juga itam nimishena chakshusha pravusha itam sunya itam jagat sarvam govinda virahena me aslishva padaratam pinastumam adarshanan marmahatam karotuva jata tathava viradatulam pato mat pranatastu saivana para Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam ki jai Namah Varanaya Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaur Tishe Namah Namo Vishnu Paraya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutane Shmati Vedanta Saminiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaurvani Pracharini Neva Shishasmani Satari Satari. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the horrible the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the primary benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names, like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names, you have invested with your transcendental energies. They are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind. Think oneself a Lord on a stroll in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause that devotes in service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some rather I'm following this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? Oh Govinda, feeling your suppression, I am considering momentarily like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I'm feeling all vacant in the world in your absence. I don't know when by Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if sandals me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything. He is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhastakam ki jai. There are 10 offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate a life for propagating the holy name of the Lord. 2. To consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic scriptures or scriptures in pursuance of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation to the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruit of activity karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against his 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve desired success. Krishna, Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto all the Vaishnavas of the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Devancha kalpatarubhyascha kripasindho vyaivacha paritanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavindi ki Jai. Shri Mangala Charan, Shri Guru Pranam Cheja. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshuran Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jyotaparakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatha Vintam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Visakamritam Cha Hey Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Patsatyadi Satarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Iti Namine Shri Varshavanu Videvi Daitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vigyana Daine Prabhave Namaha Madhu Jojala Premadhya Shri Rupanuga Bhaktida Shri Gaura Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravane Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudhapo Siddhanta Dvantaharine Namagura Kishoraya Sakchaviragya Murtaye Vipralambhara Sambodhi Paramujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Satchitanandanamine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Vidbhava Vishwam Nirdeshta Sajjanapriya Vaishnava Sarvamashri Jagannatayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Bhagavaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurachase Namaha Bhakmatam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhakta Avataram Bhaktavam Namami Bhakta Saktikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Jayatam Surator Pangur Mama Mandamatir Gati Matsarva Swapadam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpadramadaha Shimad Ratnakara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Shila Govinda Devo Prestali Vihi Sevyamano Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasamambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venuswaner Gopir Gopinatak Striye Struna Tapta Kanchana Gurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai.
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chintamani Prakada Sadma Sukalpa Riksha Laksha Vrite Susra Avipaliantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kvananda Maravenda Dalayataksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddhasundarangam Kandar Prakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Sovam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvanamalya Vansi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakiri Kalavilasam Shamam Trivanga Lalita Prasam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kayanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadvijvala Migrahasya Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sadurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastakoti Satavatsada Sampragamyo Vayo Ratapi Manaso Mudipungamanam Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chaitam Jagadanda Koti Chaktirasti Jakadandam Chayayadanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusa Sukta Yameva Nikama Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavita Bhista Birya Eva Nijarupa Dayakalabi Koloka Eva Nivasata Kilatma Bhuto Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena Santak Sadeva Hridesu Vilokayanti Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Rama Adi Murti Sukalani Menatista Nana Avataram Akarod Bhuvanesakintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumamyo Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Pavavato Jagananda Koti Kotisvasesa Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesa Bhutam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagadanda Satani Sute Trigun Yatad Vishaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Ya Praninam Patifalam Smaratam Upetya Lila Yatena Bhuvanani Jayaya Jasram Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Tale Chatasya Devi Maheswari Dama Sute Suteshu Tete Prabhava Nijaya Vitaschayena Yogovindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Shastistate Pralaya Sadhana Sakti Reka Chayevi Yasya Bhuvanani Vibharti Durga Ichana Rupam Abhyasya Chitestate Sa Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Visesi Yoga Sanjayate Naitata Pritakaste Hetu Yasambutam Apitata Samapaitikar Yat Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Diparchadevita Santanam Abhyupetya Dipayate Brivitetu Samana Dharma Yastadrigeva Hicha Vishnu Daya Vibhati Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narnava Jale Bhajitisma Yoga Nidram Ananta Jagadanta Saroma Kupa Adhara Saktim Avalamya Paramsvam Vurtim Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Asyaika Nisvasit Kalamatavalamya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jagadanta Vishnur Mahansa Yasya Kalavi So Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Basmanya Tasma Sakalation Jesu Teja Swayam Kiyat Prakatiyat Apitadvutatra Bhamaya Esa Jagadanta Vidana Karta Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbad Vande Pranama Samayesa Kaladi Raja Vignan Bhagavan Vihantam Malamasya Jagatrayasya Govindo Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahika Ganamambu Maruti Sascha Kalas Tatatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Amcha Govindo Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yaschak Suresa Savita Sagalagrahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Teja Yasya Gaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govindo Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmota Bhapa Nichaya Sutayastapam Si Brahmadi Kita Patagava Deasta Jiva Yadata Matra Vibhava Prakata Prabhava Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastlendra Gopam Adavendram Ahoswa Karma Bandhana Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdhati Kintu Chabakti Bhajam Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Kroda Kamasa Japanayati Biti Vatsalya Moha Gurgora Vasavya Bhavai Sanchinti Tasya Sadvisim Tanamapurete Govinda Madi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Shriya Kanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Dramabu Mischintamani Ganama Itoyam Amritam Kata Ganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriyasa Kichiranantam Jyotiparam Apitaza Swadyam Apicha Sayatra Siradi Bihi Savadi Surabi Byasta Sumahan Nimesa Dakyo Vava Jitina Hiyatrapi Samaya Bhajaitve Svita Advitam Tamaham Ilgola Kamitiyam Vidantaste Santakshati Viracharakatipaye Shri Guru Vastika prayers ki jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy. Just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it, so the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. Offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet. Such spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. He also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress their deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship. But, O Lord, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. Spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food, analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes, Radhika and Madhava, and their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he's expert at assisting the gopis who at different times made different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the road. Gurus of Vrindavan. I offer my most humble obeisances unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master. The spiritual master to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant to the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of such spiritual master, who is a bona fide representative of Shri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives a benediction. Without the presence of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master at least 3 times a day. I should offer my respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shrimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Shrimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 5, verse number 3. Janasya Krishna Vimukasya Daivad Adharma Silasya Suduk Kititasya Anugrahayena Charanti Nunam Bhutani Bhavyani Janardanasya. Janasya, of the common man. Krishnat, from the Supreme Lord. Krishna. Vimukasya, of the one who has turned his face against the Lord. Daivad, by the influence of external energy. Adharma Silasya, of one who is engaged in irreligion. Dukitasya, of one who is always unhappy. Anugrahaya, due to being compassionate towards them. Iha, in this world. Charanti, wander. Nunam, certainly. Bhutani, persons. Bhavyani, great philanthropic souls. Janardhanasya, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Oh my Lord, great philanthropic souls travel on the earth on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to show compassion to the fallen souls who are averse to the sense of subordination to the Lord. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. To be obedient to the wishes of the Supreme Lord is the natural position of every living entity. But due only to past misdeeds, a living being becomes averse to the sense of subordination to the Lord and suffers all the miseries of material existence. No one has anything to do but render devotional service to the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna. Therefore, any activity other than transcendental loving service to the Lord is more or less a rebellious action against the supreme will. All fruitive activity, empirical philosophy, and mysticism are more or less against the sense of subordination to the Lord. And any living entity engaged in such rebellious activities is more or less condemned by the laws of material nature, which work under the subordination of the Lord. Great unalloyed devotees of the Lord are compassionate towards the fallen, and therefore they travel all over the world with the mission of bringing souls back to Godhead, back to home. Such pure devotees of the Lord carry the message of Godhead in order to deliver the fallen souls, and therefore the common man who is bewildered by the influence of the external energy of the Lord should avail himself of their association. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. O my Lord, great philanthropic souls travel on the earth on behalf of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to show compassion to the fallen souls who are averse to the sense of subordination to the Lord. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So this reluctance to be subordinate to the Lord is the cause of our problems. And it's very hard to overcome. People want to be independent of God and of even material nature, but it's impossible to be either independent of God or of material nature. Why is that? Because no matter what you do or what we do, we'll be obliged to get old, get sick, and die. No one can stop that. No one has ever stopped that. So, therefore, some things are inevitable. You cannot avoid them, or we cannot avoid them. But the stubborn people who are envious of Krishna and refuse to be subordinate to the Lord will try to wiggle their way out of the laws of nature, which is impossible to do. But they'll try, and they'll waste a whole lifetime trying and still be subject to old age, disease, and death. So, to remedy this sickness of not wanting to be subordinate to the Lord, and one requires treatment. So when a doctor treats someone, a good doctor, not a junk doctor, he'll give a diet and he'll give medicine. So the diet is Mahaprasadam, and medicine is chanting Hare Krishna at least 16 rounds a day, preferably in the early morning, and then there's no limit to how many times you can chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in a day, but the best time to chant is early in the morning and before coming to Mangala Aarti. So most people will just sleep through the whole Brahma Muhurta period, and so they miss the best time to make spiritual advancement. So taking rest early, waking up early is very important if you want to advance in Krishna consciousness. If you don't, then just sleep through it. And you'll always be trying to do catch-up. Not ketchup, but catch-up. But you'll never be able to catch up because there's too many diversions during the day. So, therefore, regulation of one's activities is very important. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he had one of these watches on a chain, you know, and he'd always be looking at it because he was very strictly regulated. That's why he wrote over 100 books, and he was a chief justice or magistrate, the highest position an Indian could achieve in the British colonial government. And he was also the manager of the entire Jagannath Puri temple. He also had 13 children. He was married. So he was a remarkable person. But what was the background of that remarkable achievement? Strict regulation. So that's the difference between a civilized person and an uncivilized person. Uncivilized people are chaotic. And by the way, there's a study just came out 2 days ago that said that the body is not made to be up late at night. You actually throw the functioning of the body off by staying up late, especially after 12 o'clock at night. But someone who wants to be regulated in Krishna consciousness, they should take rest before 10 o'clock at night, preferably like 9:30 at the latest, and then you can easily wake up 3 o'clock or 3:30 in the morning, refreshed, and the final meal you should eat shouldn't be later than 6 o'clock at night. Even 5 o'clock is best, so that way you've digested your food, you get a very good sleep, and then you're ready to chant your rounds, go to Mangala Aarti, and do all these wonderful activities in the Brahma Muhurta, and you still have energy to go through the rest of the day with all the different obligations that we have. So, here it says, "Oh my Lord, great philanthropic souls." So philanthropic souls is a person who is practicing para upakar. Para upakar means doing good to others. And the highest good we can do to others is to give them the knowledge by which they can be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. What other boon is there? What other benediction is there than that? That's the greatest benediction. And this is what Prabhupada did. He went all over the world and spread the process by which people can be liberated from the cycle of birth and death. So he's the most, like Lord Chaitanya, a very magnanimous person because he's spreading Krishna consciousness to everyone. He did not discriminate on the basis of skin color or race or ethnicity or national identity, etc. It didn't matter what religion you were or if you're an atheist. He presented the truth about Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was recommended once when he was forming the Krishna consciousness movement legally in New York, and he said he was asked by his lawyer, what's the name of your organization? He said, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And the lawyer said, no, I wouldn't use that name, Krishna. Why don't you just say International Society for God Consciousness? And Prabhupada said, I've come to the Western countries to teach people who Krishna is. So I'm not going to say God consciousness, I want to say Krishna consciousness. So Prabhupada had a very clear objective, and that was to give bona fide knowledge of who God is. He's a person, he has a name, and he has an address, and he has preferences. So Prabhupada expanded or revealed the knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Now this is very important because in Kali Yuga, Mayavad philosophy is very popular, and atheism also is very popular. In fact, now in the United States, atheism is the largest group. It's bigger than any of the Christian groups. So they separate the Christian groups into Catholic, Protestant, like that. So when you make all that separation, it turns out that the number of atheists is greater than any one of those denominations. If you split the Christianity up into the different sects of Christianity. So yeah, atheism is increasing in the United States. This is due to the educational system in the schools that kids are subjected to. And in fact, in public schools, you're not allowed to start talking about God. Of course, you can talk about the native Indian religion, that's okay. But you talk about Christianity or even Krishna consciousness, they'll stop you. If you want to talk about those things after school or outside of classes, that's okay. But not in the classes, they won't. They'll stop you. Why do they do that? Because their whole educational system is based on atheistic humanism, which rejects the existence of God. So this is a dilemma because people want to go to school to get an education, but actually you don't really get an education. You get indoctrination of atheism. So here we see that to be obedient to the wishes of the Supreme Lord is the natural position of every living entity. This is a big statement. In other words, we're always subordinate to someone. Like when you're born, you're going to be subordinate to your parents for at least 12 to 16, 18 years. And when you go to school, you're subordinate to your teachers and the principal of the school. You get a job, you're subordinate to the owner of the company or to team leaders. You get married, you're subordinate, or sometimes you act subordinate to your wife or the husband. So there's always going to be this superior-inferior designation. If we always claim that I'm not subordinate to anyone, and definitely not subordinate to God, I don't even believe God exists, then you become very deeply entangled in material life and karma. And that, therefore, Prabhupada says, but due only to past misdeeds, a living being becomes averse to the sense of subordination to the Lord and suffers all the miseries of material existence. So, yesterday we learned something very interesting, and that was the statement Prabhupada made that when a person is most people are confused why there is so much suffering in the world, and it raises a big question mark in their mind. If God is a kind God, then why does He permit evil to exist? So this has always perplexed people throughout history. Now, what's the explanation of that? Why is it, if God is a good man, then why is there evil in the world? Well, because God is always, or Krishna is always merciful. He's the most merciful and most magnanimous, generous. However, every living entity has a free will, and that free will is limited to two positions. Either one accepts Krishna or one rejects Krishna. And Krishna doesn't interfere with that decision. It's a decision that you have to make. And this is something in life that is a fact, and also can be something that people fear, because making decisions means that you have an opportunity to either make the right decision or the wrong decision. And when we make the wrong decision, there are consequences. So this confuses people, and therefore, without having education in Krishna consciousness, we will continually make wrong decisions, and that just puts us deeper and deeper into the cycle of birth and death, and limits our independence. We want to be independent, but first of all, we're not, because we're subject to birth, old age, disease, and death. And these things are limitations on us, and they're forced on us. We don't choose to do these things. It's all forced. So to become independent, you would have to become free of birth, death, old age, and disease. And you can't do that without becoming Krishna conscious. So everybody's been trying to do it without Krishna consciousness since time immemorial, and it always fails. And you have the superstar examples of Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, and also Ravana and Kumbhakarna and Kamsa, Sisupala, and so many people. Those are the big stars in the ancient time. But today there's millions of so-called stars of egregious acts of bad karma and bad decisions. So this is something we should learn right away, as early as possible in life, how to make the right decisions and avoid making the wrong decisions. So that's what's explained today. It says that, but due only to past misdeeds, a living being becomes averse to the sense of subordination to the Lord and suffers all the miseries of material existence. Miseries due to this body, miseries due to other persons or creatures, and miseries due to natural cataclysmic events. This is always happening. You get the virus, you get the monkeypox. That's the new disease that's going around, and then there's other diseases going around. If you look at our chart over there, at least I think up to 60 million people. I mean, there's like 300 million people in the United States. At least 60 million people, no, more than 60 million people. 68 million people have STIs. STI is sexually transmitted infection. That's a lot of people, right? And every year, the number keeps increasing. It increases approximately at 20 million a year, new infections. And infections of what? There's gonorrhea, there's syphilis, there's chlamydia, and all these different sexually transmitted diseases. Of course, there's HIV and others. Now there's monkeypox. So why is this happening? Well, because people engage in illicit activities. So you have the five illicit activities, which are meat eating, gambling, intoxication, illicit sex. The number of people that are affected by these four negative things is astronomical. If you look at the statistics, and that means that millions and millions of people every year are ruining their life because of these 4 bad habits. Will they stop? No. That's called tamas, ignorance. They won't stop because they're ignorant. Instead of stopping, they're taught in movies and books to glorify these 4 things, right? And it has become part of the culture. Just like you'll see, like little kids, they'll start smoking when they're like 12 years old, and then drinking beer, and then eventually marijuana, and then maybe even harder drugs, and then engaging in illicit sex. They start when they're just like 10, 11, 12 years old. And it goes on all throughout life. And then meat eating, well, they make baby food with meat in it, but it's pureed, just to train the babies. You know, when I say babies, they're like 6 months old or 1 year old. They have the baby purees, and they put meat in it, so they're trained to get the taste right from early on. And then and of course illicit sex. Well, that's glorified in the movies and in books and in scientific so-called sexology books. So this is ruining people's lives. We already have our previous karma that to deal with, where we've done these things in previous lives, and then it's emphasized throughout our whole childhood, and eventually we submit to this type of the downward spiral to sense gratification. So, therefore, there has to be an army of preachers going all over the world, traveling and preaching, to help the suffering masses of people by giving them genuine information of what is the purpose of life and how to attain that purpose. And the main point is good association. But most of the time, people are associating with bad people. But if we can understand that association is the most important thing in Krishna consciousness. If you associate with good devotees, you will become a good devotee. If you associate with loose devotees, you'll become a loose devotee. If you associate with non-devotees, you'll become a non-devotee, right? It's pretty simple. It's not complicated. It's not rocket science. So association is the most important thing in spiritual life. So here it says, no one has anything to do but render devotional service to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, any activity other than transcendental loving service to the Lord is more or less a rebellious action against the Supreme Will. Well, what does he mean by Supreme Will? That means Krishna wants us to come back to Godhead and have eternal life and engage in eternal pastimes with him and other great devotees. He wants that more than we do. We're reluctant to make that the goal of our life. Say, we have other goals. You know, somebody wants to be a baseball player. Somebody wants to be a gambler. Somebody wants to be an IT person or an AI person, and somebody wants to be a businessman. Right? Does anyone want to be Krishna conscious? Very few. Why? Because they don't have the right association. So, this is something. That's why Prahlad Maharaj, when he was only 5 years old, he started preaching to other kids of his age. They were 4 or 5 years old. He said, listen, don't listen to anything that the teachers say here. They're all teaching you nonsense. We should take up chanting Hare Krishna and becoming devotees as early as possible in life. He's only 5 years old. but he's preaching, and his preaching was very effective. And because of that, his father, who was a big demon, wanted to kill him, and he tried to kill him in many different ways, even going as far as to poison his food. So he forced his wife to cook food and put poison in it, and they both offered it to Prahlad. And Prahlad, of course, being a devotee, offered it first to Krishna mentally, and then when he ate it, he didn't die of the poison. So therefore, we should only eat prasadam, never eat anything that hasn't been offered first to Krishna. So, now, is Prahlad's story like mythology? It's like something made up? No, he actually existed, and everything that's explained about him is factual. So here we see a 5-year-old boy who was educated in the womb of his mother, because Narada Muni was speaking in his ashram about Krishna all the time to his mother, who was pregnant, and the little boy, or the little baby inside, was hearing it, and he became Krishna conscious. So right from the beginning of his life, as soon as he was born, he was Krishna conscious. So are these things believable? Well, for most people, they would say, no, that's science fiction, that's not factual. How can a baby be educated in the womb of the mother? But that's why you have to have what's called the stretch of faith. You have to have faith in the explanations and the Shastra and the statements of the Acharyas, and ultimately the original statements of Krishna. So if we have that faith, and how do you develop faith? By association with faithful persons. And if you associate with persons that don't have faith, well, you'll never develop faith in Krishna. Okay, so it continues. All fruitive activity, empirical philosophy, and mysticism are more or less against the sense of subordination to the Lord, and any living entity engaged in such rebellious activity is more or less condemned by the laws of material nature, which work under the subordination of the Lord. Well, that means, going to school and listening to junk theories is actually a rebellious act against Krishna. It's better not to go to school. In fact, Prabhupada says it's better not to be educated by the demons than to submit to their education, because a person who, like for nowadays, there's a question. The question is, should I go to college and get a college education, or should I not? Well, many people now are questioning that, because college is expensive, and you're going to spend 4 years or 6 years or 8 years or 18 years trying to get some degree, and hopefully that'll guarantee you a good job. But what is a good job? A good job is a job where you make enough money to maintain your body and soul together and still have plenty of time for Krishna consciousness. And in relationships, like if you get married, you need time to have a relationship with your wife and your children. But if you're worried all the time to keep your job and make more money and more money and more money, you won't have any time, even to associate with your own kids. You'll be running around all the time trying to make money and meet all the deadlines that are given to you to give results of your work. So we see that people are getting caught in this trap of materialistic education, and then working in these big companies, apparently making a lot of money, but then having a huge amount of anxiety and not time to actually associate with your own family, well, let alone associate with devotees, right? You don't even have time to associate with your family, right? Most of the time they send the kids to the school, and they have and they go to work, and then they come late. They keep the kids after school in the school, and the parent comes late, picks up the kid, go home, and then they have to cook and they have to eat, and then they're exhausted, and they end up watching television and falling asleep. So the kids are in the school sometimes 8 to 10 hours a day, right, in the association of non-devotees. So it says here, all fruit of activity, empirical philosophy. So empirical means only what you can see with your senses. So you can't see Krishna, so therefore we reject the existence of Krishna because you can't see or measure him. So empirical means what you can measure and see with your senses. So that limits your understanding of reality to like one small percentage of reality. It's just like if you, with your eyes, you look out the window of your airplane flying over the Pacific, and you even take a picture, a photo. But how much of the ocean do you actually see when you're 35,000 feet in the air and there are clouds, and you say, oh, I saw the ocean, but you didn't see hardly anything of the ocean, right? So that's how limited our seeing is. We don't really see much of reality. Even when you look at a person, you don't really see much. You don't see their heart, you don't see their liver, you don't see their gallbladder, you don't see their bones, you don't see their veins. You just see the outside skin, and you don't see their brain. And the only hints you have of those things is when they talk to you and they give you some hints that there's something going on in their body. You don't even see those things in your own body. So our seeing is extremely limited. So if we limit ourselves to only empirical, or in other words, as it says here, empirical philosophy or empirical science, we won't understand hardly anything of reality. Right? And then of course it says, all fruit of activity, empirical philosophy, and mysticism are more or less against the sense of subordination to the Lord, and any living entity engaged in such rebellious activity is more or less condemned by the laws of material nature, which work under the subordination of the Lord. Great unalloyed devotees of the Lord are compassionate towards the fallen, and therefore they travel all over the world with the mission of bringing souls back to Godhead, back to home. So that's now if you look at the question, and this is a question I've been asked many times, is what prompted you to become a member of the Hare Krishna movement? And my answer has always been the same. I said, look, I wanted to do that activity that would be most beneficial to myself and to others. And I studied Christianity and Judaism and Islam and Buddhism and Jainism and Sikhism and atheism, and I came up with the conclusion that Krishna consciousness is the best thing for me personally and for other people. That's after a long study of all these other things, because these are ways of life, right? There's a Jewish way of life, there's a Muslim way of life, there's a Christian way of life, etc. And they have a whole plan, right, of what you can eat and how you do things. But after a comparison of all this, it became clear in my mind that Krishna consciousness was the best thing for me. Now, somebody might say, well, it's not the best thing for me. The best thing for me is LGBTQ or whatever. All right, fine. But ultimately, what you get through Krishna consciousness is liberation from the cycle of birth and death. What could be better than that? That's the supreme goal of life. Everybody wants to be free of birth, death, old age, and disease. So, we have to make a decision in our life. What is the best thing for myself, and also what is the best thing I can do to help others? And you'll see Krishna consciousness, it will come out number one if you have an honest comparison. So then it says, such pure devotees of the Lord carry the message of Godhead in order to deliver the fallen souls, and therefore the common man who is bewildered by the influence of the external energy of the Lord should avail himself of their association. Okay, so what we learned today, everything depends on our association. And also, we are hardwired to be subordinate to God. And if we reject that premise that we are all subordinate to God, we get caught in the grip of a very strong grip of Maya, and basically we waste our life pursuing goals that are take us deeper into illusion rather than liberate us from illusion. So there's an example. It's because today's Balaram's appearance day. Let's see, what time is it? Is it 7 o'clock? Okay. So I want to talk about one pastime of Lord Balaram that's very instructive. And it says, when Lord Balaram saw that Romaharsana Sutta did not understand the highest principle of religion in spite of his having studied all the Vedas, he certainly could not support his position. Romaharsana Sutta had been given the chance to become a perfect Brahmana, but because of his ill behavior in his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his low birth was immediately remembered. Romaharsana Sutta had been given the position of a Brahmana, but he had not been born in the family of a Brahmana. He had been born in a Pratiloma family. According to Vedic concept, there are two kinds of mixed family heritage, called Anuloma and Pratiloma. When a male is united with a female of a lower caste, the offspring is called Anuloma. But when a male unites with a woman of a higher caste, the offspring is called Pratiloma. Romaharsana Sutta belonged to the Pratiloma family because his father was a Kshatriya and his mother a Brahmana. Because Romaharsana's transcendental realization was not perfect, Lord Balaram remembered his Pratiloma heritage. In other words, everyone is given a chance to be Krishna conscious. And Prabhupada gave Krishna consciousness to everyone. He didn't ask them, oh, what is your caste? Or who are your parents? He didn't ask any questions like that. He was willing to give Krishna consciousness to anyone, the best person in the world or the worst person in the world. Right? And after a person becomes Krishna conscious, one forgets about where they came from, what background they had, right, or what race they had, or what ethnicity they have. That's not relevant anymore because now they're Krishna conscious. But if they misbehave, one has the right to remember their background. And this is what happened with this Romaharsana. He had this very exalted position. He's in Naimisharanya. He was voted to sit on the Vyasasana and instruct everybody else. And there were some of the greatest sages in the whole universe present in the audience who were, in a sense, superior to Romaharsana. But they gave him the chance to speak from the highest position, sitting on the Vyasasana. Okay, so it says, the idea is that any man may be given a chance to become a Brahmana, but if he improperly uses the position of a Brahmana without actual realization, then his elevation to the Brahminical position is not valid. After seeing the deficiency of realization in Romaharsana Sutta, Lord Balaram decided to chastise him for being puffed up. Lord Balarama therefore said, this man is liable to be awarded the death punishment because although he has the good qualification of being a disciple of Lord Vyasadeva, and although he has studied all the Vedic literature from this exalted personality, meaning Vyasadeva, he was not submissive in the presence of the Supreme Personality Godhead. Who's the Supreme Personality Godhead? It's Balaram. So we see how misbehavior after being initiated by a bona fide spiritual master and having studied the Vedas, if there's any misbehavior due to arrogance and due to non-gentle and non-merciful behavior, then a person becomes punishable. And you can remember his background also. So, therefore, as stated in the Bhagavad Gita, a person who is actually a Brahmana and is very learned must automatically become very gentle also. But although Ramaharsana Sutta was very learned and had been given a chance to become a Brahmana, he had not become gentle. From this, we can understand that one who is puffed up by material acquisitions cannot acquire the gentle behavior befitting a Brahmana. Very significant statement. And if you look at the 6 points of surrender, first is accept everything favorable for Krishna consciousness. The second is reject everything unfavorable. The third is accept Krishna as your protector. The fourth is accept whatever happens as the mercy of the Lord. It can be positive or it can be negative. Right? If something is negative, the devotee thinks, I'm getting these reactions because of my previous karma. Therefore, I'm going to double down on my chanting and following more strictly the regulative principles. And if everything is going really good and one is very successful, one doesn't become puffed up and says, well, I did this and I did that. And what did you do? You didn't do anything. No. He says, this is all Krishna's mercy, and I'm going to be very humble and meek and continue in devotional service. The Lord is being very kind to me, but it's not going to go to my head. I'm going to continue being a humble servant of the Lord. So, in both situations, the devotee continues and practices the principles of Krishna consciousness, which is the basis of the success. The basis of the success is following the regulative principles. And the basis for failure, as we see by the statistics of what happens when you eat meat, you have a very good chance of getting cancer, diabetes, or cardiac problems. Very good chance. How come the biggest 2 killers in America is cancer and heart failure and heart attacks? And why is that? Well, every year in the United States, 55 billion animals are eaten. This only in the United States. 55 billion. That's an astronomical number of people eating a huge amount of meat from fish and shellfish, finfish and shellfish, and chickens and turkeys and pigs and sheep and lambs or goats and of course cows, etc. 55 billion. So is it surprising that in America every year over 600,000 people have heart attacks and over 600,000 people die of cancer? It's not surprising at all. In fact, and it's increasing every year. with the consumption of flesh. So, therefore, if we follow the regulative principles, we'll be successful. And especially if we're humble and meek and work very sincerely to please Guru and Krishna, we'll be successful in everything we do. And if we don't follow, even if you have material success, you'll become a failure. Right? Okay, so therefore, after seeing the deficiency of realization, Ramaharsana Sutta, Lord Balaram decided to chastise him for being puffed up. Lord Balaram therefore said, this man is liable to be awarded the death punishment. So we'll fast forward. He actually kills him. And he just touches him with a blade of kusha grass, and immediately Ramaharsana dies, right in front of everyone. Everyone was like shocked. But he deserved to be killed because he was puffed up. He didn't respect Lord Balaram at all. He didn't stand up when Lord Balaram entered the hall where all the sages were. Everybody else stood up, and these were sages that were superior to Ramaharsana. They all stood up, and Ramaharsana, seeing that, he should immediately have stood up and offered his respects to Balaram. But no, he just continued sitting and acting as if he's superior to Balaram. So Balaram kills him. Right? And then everyone gets freaked out, and they try and convince Balaram, look, he just killed a Brahmana while he was lecturing and in front of everybody. You should do something, you should go on pilgrimage or do something to atone for your act, which is a horrible act. So Balaram was humble and meek, and he said, okay, I'll do that. And he went on pilgrimage to all the different holy places in India. He went to Balaji, Tirupati. Balaji was there 5,000 years ago, right? There's a description of him, of his itinerary, all the different holy places he went to, and Tirupati was one of them. So we see it's a very ancient pilgrimage site. Okay, but Balaram was meek and submissive to the Brahmanas and to Krishna. Like yesterday, a question was asked, how is it possible that Balaram was supporting Duryodhana, teaching him the military arts, and Krishna was supporting Arjuna, right? Well, it's not surprising. Yeah, Balaram, he liked Duryodhana, but he was submissive to Krishna. So when Krishna told him, look, don't fight in this battle of Kurukshetra, you just go out, and go in parikrama, stay away. Balaram listened to him, right? So we should follow Balaram's example of listening to spiritual authority and planning our life on the basis of avoiding the four negative, self-destructive activities and engaging in the four constructive activities, chanting Hare Krishna, eating only prasadam, associating with devotees and doing devotional service, and going out on Sankirtan, preaching. Okay, I'll stop right there. Are there any questions? This is Krishna book, chapter 78, where it talks about the killing of Dantavakra, Vidurata, and Ramaharsana. So that's chapter 78. Krishna book. Okay, we'll stop right there and have Guru Puja. Thank you. Who wants to chant Guru Puja? Anyone? Yeah, go ahead. You want to play the harmonium, Hari?
Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bando Mui Savadana Mate
Bando Mui Savadana Mate
Hara Prasade Vai E Bhava Doriya Jai
Kevala Bhakti Sadma
Bando Mui Savadana Mate
Bando Mui Savadana Mate
Sara Prasade Vai E Bhava Toriya Jai
Janar Prasade Vai He Baba Doriya Jai
Krishna Prapti Ho Jahoite
Krishna Prapti Hoy
Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Jite Te Goriya
Guru Mukha Mavakya Chitte Koriya Aikya
Harana Koriya Mane Asha Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati
Ja Prasade Pure Sarva Asha
E Prasade Pure Sarvasa
Chakshudan dilo je janme janme Prabhu se
Chakshudan dilaje janme pranme Prabhu se
Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito
Vyagani de Prakasito
Prema Bhakti Jate Avidya Vinasha Jate
Prema Bhakti Jahate Avidya Vinasajate
Vidigay Jahara Charito
Vidigay Janara Charito
Vidigay Jahara Charito Ah Prabhu Koro Daya Keho More Pada Chaya Bhakti Vinodashaya Karuna Sindhu Ajama Janara Bandhu Lokinath Lokera Jivana Ah Prabhu Koro Daya Deho More Pada Chaya
Aha Prabhu Kora Doya Namaste Amore Padachaya
Ebe Jasa Jusukti Bhuvana
Eya Shakti Bhuvana
Ebe Jasa Jusukti Bhuvana Patita Bhavana Hare Krishna Pada Prabhupada Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada
Jaya Gurudeva 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 Jaya Gurudeva
Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva Jaya Gurudeva
Tagora Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gora Hari Bol
Gora Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nita Gora Hari Bol
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine
Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Krishna Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravajagatara Shrimad. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vinda ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Ram Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakti Vinda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Samkunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrindavan ki jai. Shri Mayapura Dham ki jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Ganga Maya ki jai. Yamuna Maya ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinda ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to the Prabhupada. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the